Azərbaycan A-da Universitetində demək ki, brifinq başlayır. Gəlin biz ora canlı şəkildə bağlanaq, sonra mən sualımı təkrar edəcəm sizə.
Due to pandemic, but this is our first event that we are hosting in a very long time. We are very grateful to everyone who has spared time to attend this event. And today we will have an opportunity for our guest speakers to provide some additional information to the briefings that were held previously, some additional updates, some additional information. We have also prepared a short movie for you, a documentary movie, and then there will be also an opportunity for Q&A session as well. I think for me there's no need to introduce our guest speakers. They are quite well known to every one of you, but it is my duty to introduce them once again. It is Mr. Hikmet Hacıyev, Assistant to President of Azerbaijan, as well as Head of the Foreign Policy Department at the Presidential Administration. We have Mr. Elçin Emirbayev, Ambassador Elçin Emirbayev, who is Assistant to First Vice President, and we have Mr. Hüseyin Mahmudov from Ministry of Defense, Head of the International Relations Department. All of them are going to be here as speakers. Thank you very much for coming, and I think what we will do is first we will go to the documentary movie, and then we will have some speeches. Thank you. Okay, so this is very sad documentary, and generally the conflict in the past few weeks has been a very traumatic event for many of us in the society. Hikmet Müəllim, perhaps I will start by passing the floor to you, because you are in the epicenter of many events, and you will provide us with some important statistical information, which later on can turn into a discussion as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Faris Malim, and thank you, AJ University, for hosting this event, and also thank you for our diplomatic corps for being together with us. Indeed, it's also very difficult for me to speak after listening to the video, and all of you have also witnessed on the ground. I also take this opportunity to express our thanks for our diplomatic community and our ambassadors on Saturday morning, and with a short call you joined us and you visited, and you also shared with the sorrow of Azerbaijani people, and by your visit you also expressed your condolences to Azerbaijani people on the ground, and especially in the second attack to Ganja city of Azerbaijan. I would also encourage all our diplomatic community in our future activities, God forbid, hopefully it not happen, but in such cases, your solidarity with Azerbaijani people, I believe, will also be highly appreciated. I wanted to provide you with additional further information about the situation on the ground, and also you may have potential some questions, and I will also be glad to answer them. And as everybody sees that the war unleashed by Armenia against the Azerbaijani people continues, and battleground gains by Azerbaijani armed forces have caused sense of misorientation, and Armenia continues to attack Azerbaijani civilians and Azerbaijani cities and villages. And as of 19th October, 59 Azerbaijani civilians have been killed, 279 civilians are seriously wounded. More than 300 civilian facilities and nearly 2,000 houses and buildings have been destroyed. Even hospitals, medical facilities, ambulances, schools and kindergartens are also not spared. On October 10th, as everybody knows, as a sign of goodwill, Azerbaijan has agreed for the humanitarian truce mediated by Russian Federation. However, immediately aftermath of this agreement on 11th of October, Armenia launched a Scud missile attack from its own territory to the residential area of Ganja city of Azerbaijan. On 17th October, Armenia hit a residential area in Ganja with a rocket for the second time. As a result, 13 civilians were killed and 14 are wounded. And as everybody knows, that Ganja is far away from the seat of military operations, and there was no military necessity to attack Ganja. And also, you have also witnessed that in the vicinity of these residential areas, no military facilities or no military objects. Armenia also launched their missiles against the Mingechevir city of Azerbaijan, and the city hosts a Mingechevir Dam and hydropower station, as well as Azerbaijan thermal water plant. Armenia also hit Azerbaijan's Khizi and Absheron regions with missiles, which are also vicinity of the capital of Azerbaijan, Baku city. These attacks, especially in Ganja, clearly demonstrates that Armenia behaves and acts in an irresponsible manner. It's impossible to talk to Armenia as a responsible state. What Armenia is doing is far away from the rules that governs interstate relations. Armenia is governed by only rules of the jungle. Armenia, we do always consider Armenia as a failed state, but we now consider Armenia as a rogue state. They are fighting against babies, children, and civilians. What happened in Ganja is a clear violation of the basic human rights and right to live. As a state committing such acts cannot in a position to position itself as a democratic or defender of human rights, Armenia at the government level pursues a policy of terror against the civilian population of Azerbaijan. Of course, we highly appreciate international condemnation of the attacks that have been committed by Armenia against Azerbaijani civilians. And they thought that by targeting Azerbaijani civilians, they can break the will of determination of Azerbaijani people, but they're absolutely wrong. This makes us even more stronger and determined and united around our sacred mission. And Azerbaijani people is demanding a justice. This justice is also liberation of Azerbaijan's territories from the occupation. As you know, that Azerbaijan also agreed for humanitarian truce for the second time on the 10th of October, mediated by the President of France, Monsieur Macron. However, Again, immediately after the agreement, Armenia violated it. On the first day of truce, 229 shells were fired against 5 districts of Azerbaijan, including Khizr. We have also missed, and we also provided this operational information to French side because this initiative comes from their side. And when this truce has been launched, immediately Armenian forces tried to regroup their forces and tried to bring additional forces from the territory of Armenia and tried to dig new trenches and strengthen the positions. And they also tried to bring additional ammunition to attack the positions of Azerbaijan armed forces and to capture already liberated territories. This once again demonstrates their true intention. And yesterday, they even aired 2 Su-25s, attacked the positions of Azerbaijan, and one was hit in the air. We don't have any problem, as it was mentioned and highlighted by my president. Azerbaijan doesn't fight with Armenian people or civilians. It's not in a policy of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijani community of Nagorno-Karabakh, even before this escalation, had always appealed to Armenian side for peaceful coexistence and dialogue. Unfortunately, our such appeals were always ignored. Armenian side didn't only just ignore this call, even denied the existence of Azerbaijani community of Nagorno-Karabakh. They always also denied the rights of Azerbaijani IDPs and refugees who have been ethnically cleansed from our occupied territories. We once again reiterating our call for dialogue between Armenian and Azerbaijani community of Nagorno-Karabakh. And we're also seeing silly ideas and statements still by the high political military leadership of Armenia. Now they're coming up yet another absurd idea, secession for salvation. It has nothing to do with Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict. And it's also yet another dangerous idea that also undermines future perspectives for the negotiations and to have a peaceful resolution of this conflict. And it's yet another absurd idea that aims to destroy the negotiation process. Armenian side also claims about an existential threat. And these videos once again demonstrates that people of Azerbaijan are facing the existential threat as a result of the missile attacks of Armenia against Azerbaijani cities. And it's an indiscriminate and deliberate missile attacks with the sole purpose to kill Azerbaijani civilians as much as they can. There is no other name to call it. For Azerbaijani people actually facing with the fact of existential threat from the side of Armenia. And Azerbaijani armed forces, and we are trying to support with the humanitarian truce, but once Azerbaijan has been attacked, we are obliged to respond to such provocations of Armenia, to protect our military personnel, in the meantime to ensure security and safety of Azerbaijani civilians. Just today, and since yesterday and today is also continued, 5 districts of Azerbaijan struck by 229 artillery shells, 3 missiles and 1 drone attack. Tartar, 160 artillery shells. Ağdam, 63 artillery shells. Goranboy, 6 artillery shells. Town of Horadiz in Fuzuli, 1 UAE, it was shot down in the air. Khizr, 1 missile was neutralized yesterday. And Poladlı village of Ağcabadi, 2 missiles landed in an empty place. Once again, reiterating the figures that so far we have killed civilians 59 and missing civilians 2. Wounded civilians 279. And as everybody knows very well about this continued attack of Armenia on Azerbaijani civilians since the 29th, just one interesting figure I also wanted to share with you. Approximately number of the artillery shells and missiles landed to the all civilian objects and residential areas and cities and villages of Azerbaijan is 24,2073, almost 25,000 different artillery shells have been landed to the territory of Azerbaijan. In general, damaged property 2,088, private houses 1,046, completely destroyed houses 243. Damaged 1,063. And also some monuments and also state property has also been seriously damaged. Modern international law, particularly international humanitarian law, calls for the principle of distinction between military objects and also civilian facilities, between combatants and civilians. As we know, there is no such a distinction in the actions of Armenian armed forces. The heart of international humanitarian law is principle of distinction, according to which the parties to the conflict must at all times distinguish between civilians and combatants. Armed attacks may only be directed against combatants and cannot be directed against civilians. Further, there exists an international law prohibition attacking persons recognized to be hors de combat and a rule that civilians protected from attack unless and until they take a direct part in hostilities. Hague Regulation attached to the Convention respecting the law and customs of law 1907 prohibits the attack or bombardment by whatever means of towns, villages, dwellings, buildings which are undefended. Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Convention. Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Convention of 1949 states that in order to ensure respectful and protection of the civilian population and civilian objects, the parties to the conflict shall at all times distinguish between the civilian population and combatants and between civilians and military objects. Accordingly, shall act the operations only against military objects. Even before this escalation, Even before this escalation, and we have prepared comprehensive document, report on the war crimes in the occupied territories of the Republic of Azerbaijan and the Republic of Armenia's responsibility. It's a comprehensive legal document, but it doesn't contain the current war crimes but committed by Armenian side. And we will update this document. With this update, and we'll have a more clear picture about Armenia's war crimes and crimes against humanity, including the military crimes against Azerbaijani people. And it also has been prepared not by only Azerbaijan, but international and profound legal experts. And with the current crimes added, we can come with conclusion that Armenia bears responsibility for war crimes which has been committed as a matter of the international law of state responsibility. In other words, Armenia bears state responsibility for the crimes and war crimes it has been committed against Azerbaijani people. And current crimes, including the crimes that predating 27th of September. Such responsibility includes that of agents, officials, those for whom it must be deemed liable by virtue of direct instruction. Responsibility has also been incurred by virtue of Armenia's effective control, including direction insofar as the called Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, so-called Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, is concerned in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. In addition, Armenia has been found responsible under Article 1 of the European Convention on Human Rights for acts and omissions within the occupied areas. Individual Armenians will bear criminal responsibility where allegations of war crimes are proven against them. And we have quite solid facts on the ground that openly the political military leadership of Armenia, including the agents in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, are directly called and justified missile attacks against Azerbaijani cities. Yesterday, I was on the radio interview or a radio program BBC 2 or BBC 1 together with the Armenian foreign minister. He openly in the radio program justified that Armenia's attacks was a sign of revenge. And in other words, such an officials of Armenia are justifying that they have done it on a deliberate basis. But all of these facts are well recorded and will be, of course, filed against Armenia against war crimes. As a matter of fact, it has been sufficiently demonstrated that Armenia exercises sufficient effective control of the so-called Nagorno-Karabakh and other occupied areas of Azerbaijan for it to bear responsibility under international law. And so far, we have also witnessed that Armenia, by all means, tried to ignore its presence of its armed forces in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. And current course of the military operations once again shows that it was just null and void, and Armenia directly involved in all of military operations, and Armenian armed forces are engaged against Azerbaijan, and also missile attacks are launched from the sovereign territory of Armenia against Azerbaijani civilians. And, of course, this also adds the crimes that I've already mentioned that committed by Armenia against the Azerbaijani people before 27th of September in the course of Armenia's military aggression and occupation of Azerbaijani territories, and which includes, such crimes include war crimes relating to civilian deaths or injuries, civilian property, mistreatment of detainees and prisoners of war, taking hostages, ethnic cleansing, forced displacement, and changing the character of the occupied territory, destruction of cultural heritage, and damage to natural environment. And yesterday also, as a sign of the goodwill, and Azerbaijan via ICRC appealed to Armenian side that we are ready to render some bodies of Armenian servicemen on a unilateral basis to Armenian side. Via Armenian-Azerbaijani border, especially we have already established corridor or mechanism of exchanging bodies and prisoners of war via Tovuz region of Azerbaijan. But unfortunately, it was yet again ignored by Armenia, such a call of Azerbaijan, and they tried to give it another political color. We do consider it as a sign of goodwill in the context of the humanitarian gestures and also in line with the spirit of the Moscow Declaration and also initiative of France about the humanitarian truce. But unfortunately, it once again ignored by Armenian side. We are once again reiterating that all responsibility for such provocations and also war crimes lies on the responsibility of the Republic of Armenia, including its political and military leadership. Once again, I am thankful for our diplomatic corps for coming to this briefing, and our such briefings happens on a regular basis. We also do it for us as a responsibility to inform you from the official information channels and official Azerbaijani government perspective, because we also see that a lot of disinformation and propaganda are launched by Armenian side so that to divert the attention of the international community. And once again, I am thankful for our diplomatic community for your trip to Ganja twice together with us, and also we have taken note of the statements of some countries and international institutions condemning this act and also expressing solidarity and also expressing condolences to Azerbaijani people. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the information. And I should say that some of the information that Hikmet Müəllim mentioned and some of the information highlighted in the documentary is very much used by young generation, students, youth, to actively spread the word in social media, to reach out to international community, to editors, different media outlets, different politicians, international organizations, and to use the channels of social media to promote Azerbaijan's voice and to pass the realities on the ground to the international community. Now I would like to pass the floor to Ambassador Elçin Əmirbayev, Assistant to the First Vice President, to add into this discussion.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. It's a pleasure to see you all here, and thank you for attending this briefing. And I think that Mr. Hajiev has made a very clear point about the position of Azerbaijan to what has happened. I think this, I just want to add a couple of points which would supplement to what was said. If we look at this heartbreaking video footage, and if we just realize how dreadful these sheer figures of human loss are, we should just put the question to us, what is the reason for all of this? And of course, the reason for all of this tragedy, destruction, and mass loss of human life is the fact that almost 27 years ago, this war has been imposed on Azerbaijan. This military aggression has been imposed to Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan faced ethnic cleansing on a large portion of its territory. And after having ethnically cleansed almost 20% of internationally recognized territory of Azerbaijan, Armenia started to legitimize this and started the process of settlements, changing the geographical names, and has been engaged in all sorts of illegal economic activities in these territories, all of which contradicts, of course, international law international humanitarian law, and Mr. Haji was very explicit in mentioning in which particular concrete ways. And I think that why we are sitting today and discussing these tragic events that shook Azerbaijani society, be it in Ganja or in Terter or elsewhere, is because it has been possible for Armenia to continue with these illegal policies with total impunity. Azerbaijan has waited for so many years that international law finally will be restored, and that the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan will be restored, and that all those displaced people and refugees will be given back their right to go back to their homes. And unfortunately, all these mediation efforts and all the efforts of the broader international community have not led to any result. And I think that the reason for that was because the actions of Armenia were not met with adequate response by international community. And this sense of impunity has evolved into a certain sense of permissiveness. And of course, impunity basically is the most cruel thing, because it allows you and it induces you to continue to do wrong. And this wrong was continued by Armenia because they were sure that they can get away with all these crimes and nothing will happen. And I think that this illusion, this of course brings me to the notion of illusion, because what Mr. Haji mentioned as a new invention by Pashinyan on this, secession for salvation, it is a clear manifestation that basically Armenia is in a and the leadership of Armenia is in a desperate impasse, because they have cornered themselves into this situation by continuing, war crimes, by continuing, occupying illegally the territories of another sovereign state. And when they were, beaten up at the battlefield, they started to target innocent, peaceful civilian population. They have, resorted to the so-called collective punishment acts, which are, according to the Geneva Conventions of 1949, qualified as a crime of war. And of course, Pashinyan, having put himself in line with all the predecessors of his, also war criminals like Kocheryan, Sarkisyan, who committed the Khojali Genocide Act against Azerbaijan in 1992, I think he is desperately now looking for an exit. And unfortunately, I think this illusion, I think Ralph Emerson said once that illusion is the most dangerous thing, because you cannot basically realize what is the reality on the ground. So the sooner he shakes off this illusion, the better off would be Armenia and the Armenian people, who basically will sooner or later ask him for all that he has done. Also, like the Azerbaijani people, will hold him responsible. So I think that it was clearly mentioned that despite all this tragedy and all these atrocities committed by armed forces of Armenia in Azerbaijani territories, the leadership of Azerbaijan on numerous occasions has reconfirmed its readiness and willingness to engage for the resumption of this search for peace. And that is exactly the reason why the proposals and invitations of Russian and French presidents were, of course, welcomed by Azerbaijan, and we did our part. We expressed our political will, and we actually agreed to this humanitarian truce. But each time this truce was violated. And I think that the reason why it was violated was because the Armenian side is not at all interested in the peaceful search. I think they are still, finding themselves in this illusionary and fake situation when they think that they have certain hopes to regain the territories that didn't belong to them, but which were retaken back by Azerbaijani armed forces. So I think that now it is the time for the international community not to allow new Ganjas or new Mingachevirs, new Terters. The international community has once for all, make its position clear that the aggressor, the war criminals, they need to be brought to justice, and at least they need to be stopped for the sake of peoples of Azerbaijan, but also Armenia, the broader region, for the sake of stability and security of this region of South Caucasus. And of course I will stop this. We will certainly be glad to answer any questions you may have, but I think that General Hüseyin Mahmudov may have some concrete information about the concrete data, the factual data about the violations of the latest humanitarian truce that was negotiated with the mediation of French President and other co-chair countries of the Minsk group of the OSCE, which will prove that it is not at all the intention of Armenia to stop this war, and of course then we will be ready to entertain your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear representatives of diplomatic corps, dear defense attaches, good afternoon. I would like mainly to focus on the facts of violation of ceasefire regime that was introduced from midnight 18 of October. As it happened last time, this time again, Armenia immediately broke this ceasefire. I would like to make a point that Armenian forces, Armenian side, always trying to use this opportunity of ceasefire regime in order to regroup their troops, to engage with fire our positions, and the main goal to retake already lost territories, to retake control over the tactical and strategic high grounds in order to create conditions for the next aggressive actions against positions of Azerbaijani armed forces. And what happened starting from midnight 18 October, I would like to be more precise, that's why I will give you the timeline. And I will name the districts to which directions this kind of violation happened. Just 2 minutes past midnight on 18 October, Armenian troops tried to engage our positions in Jabrail and Hadrut directions. 5 minutes past midnight until 4 o'clock in the morning, they vigorously try to escalate situation on international border between Azerbaijan and Armenia, engaging our positions in Gedabay and Tovuz regions. Again, from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the morning, Jabrail region was under attack. They tried to engage their firepower, and they tried to engage sort of counter-attack on our positions in Jabrail region. The same happened overnight in Fizuli direction. During that night, Armenian side did not hesitate to put harm on civilian population, and they were shelling Agdam, Goranboy villages of Azerbaijan. In the morning, from 7 to 9 o'clock, they tried to engage our troops in Agdara, Fizuli, Hadrut, and Jabrail region. As you see, all the time I mentioned Jabrail. Their main concern, they would like to retake in that region all lost positions, but our armed forces, our units stood firm, and they suppressed any attempts from enemy side, and in numerous occasions we forced them to flee the battleground. I can continue all the time, Fizuli, Goranboy, Hadrut, Jabrail, on these directions. We witnessed, we monitored movement of enemy troops and with their attempts, as I mentioned, to retake control over lost territories. During and after 1400, October 18, the enemy repeatedly broke the truce, repeatedly. I don't have to mention all of them here, which led to retaliatory counterattacks of Azerbaijani army into the enemy line of defense, and we forced the enemy to retreat. During these events, during these facts of violation of humanitarian ceasefire regime, Armenian side mainly used firearms, mortars, artillery systems. At one point, they engaged close air support means by flying their Su-25 attack aircraft over Jabrail region of Azerbaijan. This aircraft was trying to engage our troops, but it was shot down by air defense units of Azerbaijani armed forces. As of now, the operation situation is under full control of our forces along the entire front line. I mentioned a number of facts that happened until 18 October, and after that, the number quite high, and I don't have to repeat all of them to bring to your attention all these facts. I'd like to make additional points as well. Azerbaijan has been drawing the attention of international community and its respective organizations to the blatant and deliberate violence by Armenia of all international norms and principles by deploying its military forces, by deploying its armed forces in occupied territory of Azerbaijan and engaging in massive military buildup in these territories. And during these counter-offensive operations, the continuation of these counter-offensive operations, the amount of destroyed military hardware, of any military hardware, once again proved and showed the scale of this militarization that happened in territory of Azerbaijan, with the one pursued goal to solidify this unlawful occupation, this unlawful regime, so-called Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. And I would like to bring you to attention the next some figures. As of today, Azerbaijan army destroyed up to 300 tanks and armored vehicles, up to 460 artillery and rocket systems, more than 200 air defense systems, 36 tanks, 24 armored vehicles, 16 artillery systems, and 27 air defense systems have been captured. Just to compare, in the latest annual exchange of military information within Vienna document and CFI treaty, Armenia declared to possess 145 tanks and 260 artillery systems only. So those figures, the comparative figures, they speak for themselves. I'd like to use this opportunity to say that, once again, to say that armed forces of Azerbaijan distinguish between civilian population and combatant. And we make every effort to put no harm to civilians, acting in accordance with international humanitarian law. But vice versa, on the contrary, Armenia and Armenian armed forces openly launched attacks against civilian populations, against sleeping cities. What happened in Ganja, we all witnessed with your own eyes. And I think what happened in Ganja already went to history book as I think it's first time this type of ballistic missiles were used against cities, against civilian populations. And I would like to say that while the Minister of Defense of Azerbaijan appealed on numerous occasions to the civilian population in the occupied territories to stay away from war zone, Armenian side, on the contrary, as you see, they inflict an attack on civilian population from our side. And another point I would like to make that Armenian side already introduced restriction on free movement in occupied territories, and they prohibited all male population of conscript age to leave, all citizens of Armenia that right now in the occupied territories, to leave this territory. And doing that, their intention is to use them both as a manpower and to continue aggression against Azerbaijan, and of course to use them as a human shield, putting them in harm's way. I would like to stop right here because all other points already were mentioned by previous speakers.
Just wanted to add one final remark about also terror threats. And everybody knows that Minister of State Security Committee of Azerbaijan has made a statement. We have a potential risks of the terror threat by the intelligence services of Armenia. And with assumptions have been to an extent justified, and we have a certain operative information, because we also witnessed such a terror acts in the course of the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict in the early 90s. And Armenian intelligence services conducted terror operations in the territory of Azerbaijan, especially in Baku city and other cities of Azerbaijan, mainly targeting public transport. Therefore, we have appealed to Azerbaijani nationals to put extraordinary cautionary measures in case of something suspicious, to take all necessary measures and to inform law enforcement agencies. And as for the diplomatic community, our intelligence services and law enforcement agencies are also taking all proper actions to ensure safety and security of the diplomatic corps in Azerbaijan. And also our Minister of Foreign Affairs made today in a statement with regard to potential terror risks to the diplomatic community of Azerbaijan and embassies and embassy staff, including the private businesses of Azerbaijan, which carries the brand name of Azerbaijan outside the territory of Azerbaijan. Therefore, we are also appealed to countries, including the bilateral cooperation mechanisms to appropriate countries, that they should also raise security level of Azerbaijan's diplomatic missions. And once again, I would like to reiterate, as it was also on many occasions highlighted by my president, we don't have any military objects or targets within the sovereign territory of Armenia. It's not a policy of Azerbaijan. We know that Armenia knocking different doors or appealing different countries or trying to enlarge the geographic scope of its conflict. Once again, Azerbaijan's armed forces are operating within the perimeters of Azerbaijan's sovereign territories to ensure liberation of our territories and also to ensure security and safety of our civilians. In the meantime, we are also supporting comprehensive negotiation process for the resolution of this conflict. But it should be very comprehensive and with the sole goal of having complete resolution of this conflict. Once again, all of this development shows that we cannot afford to preserve this conflict for future generations. Now it's in a momentum, now it's an opportunity. We're also appealing to the international community to galvanize all our efforts and to exhort even additional political weight and effort to have comprehensive resolution for this conflict. Still, we are concerned about the mercenaries. But Armenia tries to bring mercenaries under the name of volunteers from different countries, and especially from the Middle East. They're bringing people of Armenian origin and some other from some other organizations, trying to bring them and also use it as a mercenaries against Azerbaijan. We also continue to be concerned about weapons delivery to Armenia. And we know what, and we also have a certain operative information that Armenian side mainly uses civilian aircraft, including the passenger aircraft. Some of the aircrafts or air companies or air carriers that are under the sanctions of the Eurocontrol and European countries. And they're, of course, providing false information to all the countries. But of course, the countries are perceiving it as a civilian aircraft, but they are in violation of the Chicago Convention and international civil aviation organization rules and regulations. They are bringing with additional ammunition. We are also appealing to the countries that to raise within a control within their internal system that they should use different black market mechanisms, including the Armenian diaspora representatives and their financial means to purchase and bring with additional weapons or missile systems. According to our information, their focus is about missile systems, especially Smersh missile systems. Therefore, by bringing with Smersh missiles, they're killing Azerbaijani civilians. Therefore, let's clear our conscience in front of the Azerbaijani civilians, because once we weapons delivered to Armenia, they will use it against Azerbaijani civilians. And once again, I wanted to reiterate this call to wider international community. Thank you. If you have other questions, with my colleagues, we'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, gentlemen, for this very valuable information. Since we are located at the university, I should say that the last 3-4 weeks have been very special weeks for young population, young generation, people who have been brought up in times of occupation and this seeing flood of refugees and horror of Karabakh conflict. So many young people are quite excited about the liberation of some of the provinces, and many students are writing to us asking to somehow help with charity projects, with development projects. Many young people are very much looking forward to help with the rebuilding of these areas. In fact, several of our students and faculty members have even proposed to open some sort of a branches of ADA University or some other school system in liberated areas to help these communities to rebuild. So I am very actively seeing this drive among young population, and they are very excited and hopeful that things will be very good for this region. We have a microphone and we have opportunity for question and answer session. If some of you would like to raise a question or give a comment or clarify some issue, please raise your hand and the volunteer will come with a microphone. Please, we have here head of the UN office in Azerbaijan, Ambassador Gulam Sagzai.
Thank you, Mr. Hajif and Mr. Meybayev and Mr. Məmmədov. Well, we, as the UN, we're also concerned about the humanitarian situation close to the former line of contacts and also, I would say, combat area. That we hear stories and news of displacement, and also that population, especially children, may be in need of support. Unfortunately, we can't do much at this point because we don't have enough information. Is there anything you can share in terms of what the government is doing? What's the status of displacement? I think that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And actually, when this military operation started from the Armenian side and escalating the situation, we have taken precautionary measures with regard to Azerbaijani civilian population. But our first priority was Azerbaijani civilian population living along the line of contact, especially, and we do perceive that's the most vulnerable population of Azerbaijan. But of course, we expected that they were going to attack Azerbaijani other cities potentially, but not to that extent indeed, really. We didn't expect that they will be such crazy to use in a responsible manner Scud missiles and other such dangerous weapons against the biggest cities or densely populated areas of Azerbaijan. But of course, it was unexpected to us because in 2016, in previous years, it's always in a case that they're attacking Azerbaijani population. It's in a number is more or less 500,000, especially densely populating line of contact area. In certain areas, we have a displacement, and we try to retreat, especially women and children, and provided public institutions and public buildings for them. And as for Azerbaijani government, Minister of Emergency Institutions and local authorities have been provided all financial and necessary means to take care of the civilians. And there are some individual charity efforts as well by Azerbaijani nationals, by some international institutions they are doing, but we have been appealed by some institutions. Currently, we don't have any particular need or necessity, but of course we are in consultation with the United Nations and your offices. We had a discussion on this issue and with an ICRC. If there is a specific need, of course, we are ready for this further discussion and consultation. But currently, we don't see any particular need, and by virtue of our own potential, we are covering and safety and also providing all necessary means to Azerbaijani civilians. Okay.
Questions or comments? Yes, Ambassador Elçin Əmirbəyev would like to make additions.
Thank you, Vice Rector. Just one small point with regard to the announcement made by Mr. Hajif, and this regards the terrorist threat. I think that this information on our part should be taken very seriously, because we have all grounds to believe that the adversary, which has been put in a very difficult situation on the battlefield, has mobilized all means, including diaspora circles, but also some other parts of bigger Armenian entity. And I think that the fact that in the 80s and 70s, the prominent Armenian terrorist organizations, the most prominent of which was Asala, have produced more than 230 terrorist acts in more than 20 countries. I think this threat to diplomats of Azerbaijan, and I think Turkey was also mentioned in some of these reports, should be taken very seriously. We all know 24 Turkish diplomats have become victims of this vicious Armenian terrorism. And the fact that today on the Armenian side, in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan, we have thousands of international terrorists fighting with Armenians against us, representing such entities as PKK and the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan and others. This, of course, makes this threat all more real. So I think that we hope that all those countries where diplomatic missions of Azerbaijan function, the host countries, in accordance with the obligations that fall on them by the Vienna Convention of 1961, will be in close touch with our diplomatic missions and would do whatever it takes to avoid the repetition of these tragic events in the past, because the behavior of Armenian adversaries is becoming more and more irrational because of the sense of despair, hopelessness. And I think that what I mentioned at the beginning, that the main reason, the continuing occupation, which has become a malignant tumor in the whole region, it should be addressed so that we don't face this kind of situations. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, on this note, Ambassador Amirbayev, yesterday our students have sent me 4 posts from Facebook where there were open call for killing of Azerbaijani and Turkish diplomats. These Facebook accounts are reported to the Facebook company as a message which is calling for open terror. But this is the first time I saw actually very specific messages with specific names calling for such terror acts. I can send it to you later on as an evidence. Maybe additional questions or comments?
I also wanted to add one with regard to collateral damage. Because whenever we are talking with the international media, we always say that Armenian side uses it as an element of propaganda, but Azerbaijan is also using the force or artillery against Khankandi, they call it Stepanakert. Once again, I would like to reiterate that Azerbaijan is not fighting with the civilians, and Azerbaijan is not targeting any civilians in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. And especially for Khankandi, I would like to specifically highlight this point that in Khankandi, there were 2 or 3 major rocket and artillery systems military base of Armenia. From that particular installation, they were attacking Azerbaijan's Tartar cities and other cities. And there was also a huge storage of Armenia's major rockets and missiles. We were obliged, and I already told you, and we shared this piece of information, that we at Kasperchik office, we appealed to Armenian Minister of Defense personally, and asking that on the 2nd and 3rd of October, I personally, via Kasperchik, contacted him that stop attacking Azerbaijani cities. It's not let's say, it fits in the context of morality. But he declined, and even in a much harsher way, attacked Azerbaijan Tartar city. And we were obliged to take with a precision-guided missile to destroy that military facility. But unfortunately, they're installing with military facilities and military bases in the close proximity of the civilian areas. And this particular military base has been destroyed, and there could be, in this case, some kind of collateral damage. But once again, these are the collateral damages, and these are not intentional, and the real figures are also speaking for themselves. Look at the figures, but how many civilians have been killed or wounded from Azerbaijani side, what happened on the other side. Yet another real example, Hadrut settlement have been liberated from Azerbaijani armed forces. Please look at these pictures. Almost all housings and all buildings are intact. Nothing has happened, except with minor injuries. As regards to the Jabrail and Fizuli, sometimes it's hard for Azerbaijanis really to watch these videos. And Fizuli and Jabrail were in prosperous regions of Azerbaijan in 1990s or 1992 before occupation. Now you see that yesterday our armed forces had a difficulty to find normal building to put Azerbaijani flag in Fizuli. It was in a region of 100,000 people before the occupation were living over there. It's a scorched earth policy. Nothing had been left. Really, we were expecting this video. It took more than 2 hours for our militaries to circle around with destructions or scorched explosives to find a normal building to put as a flag. And it speaks for itself. It was a scorched policy, killing the population and destroying the city. And a real example is a Hadrut. Hadrut has been liberated and all streets and all buildings are intact. Once again shows that our militaries in their actions, in counter-actions, are very specific and trying to use the force in case of the legitimate and with regard to the legitimate military targets and trying to be accurate as much as we can. Thank you.
Any questions or comments, clarifications? Okay,
No questions. We are thankful for our
Thank
diplomatic community for being together with us. And if we have an additional information, we will call such meetings. And we hope that it's also useful for you because we are appealing to your respective countries, and we should also be asking you to inform in a due manner your respective capitals. Thank you.
Thank you.